Hello, friends. My name is Alicia Mathlin, and these are the Deeper Wellness Talks. I am a yoga teacher, a meditation instructor, a holistic nutritionist, an essential oils educator, and a conscious living guide. And what that really means is that I take all of those modalities and try and figure out ways to help you live a happier, healthier life. For today's topic, we're going to talk about perspective. And this is such an important topic to me because I think our perspective on things is ultimately what informs our quality of life, right? So when I say the word perspective, I'm really talking about the lens in which you view your life, the people in your life, the things that are happening in your life, and also the ideas that you have around the way things unfold. Okay? So I want to give you a little bit of context here. When I was younger, I had a very negative perspective on things. And what that really meant was that I assumed the worst outcomes in multiple situations. I assumed that, things weren't going to go the way I'd hoped. I assumed that I wasn't going to get what I want. I assumed that the person I liked wasn't going to like me back. So all those things. Those assumptions were not rooted in facts. They were a negative perspective that I carried. And I used that lens to interpret everything that was happening in my life. The problem with that is if you assume everything is going to have a negative outcome, or you generally have a pessimistic outlook, what I've come to learn is that more than likely that will become your truth. So if you're directing all your energy to negative perspective on things, whether or not the facts have been revealed to you as yet or not, you will more than likely find yourself with the outcome that you fear the most. So I say all of that to give you context for what this talk is about today. And I'm not, let's be very clear, I'm not saying we should move through the world all sunny and everything's perfect and everything's fine. That is not an authentic way of being. But what I would like to offer to you today is the idea that maybe if we come from a place that's either neutral or positive, we give ourselves a better chance to improve our quality of life, right? So what does neutral mean? Let's look at neutral first. To have a neutral perspective is to not attach negative or positive to the things that have not happened as yet, right? We want things to happen for us. We have ideas about how we're going to go about getting them. And rather than say, oh, it's going to be so great and perfect, or oh, it's going to be awful, what if you just focused on the truth that you knew in the moment, right? So a really good example I can give is, this might be a 14-year-old example, but say you like someone, right? And you spend all your time thinking that that person likes you back and then it's going to work and all you have to do is have that conversation and all that kind of stuff. You have that conversation and that person does not like you at all, right? You're up here and that outcome is going to bring you back down. And the same goes for the other way around. Say you spend all this energy assuming that the person doesn't like you, isn't interested, and so on and so forth. And then you finally have a conversation and you realize, oh, like this works, this person's interested. And so you have to kind of pull yourself up from this like low vibe way of thinking that you were at, right? So you're moving up here. What I'm talking to you about with a neutral perspective is just kind of staying here, right? What are the facts that you have? Oftentimes, the fact is you just don't know. You don't know, and that's okay. I think this is the biggest thing that we all need to learn, and that is to have some comfort around uncertainty. And that's where a neutral mindset comes in. What if I don't know was okay or is okay? What if not knowing didn't come with assumptions, false assumptions of that, whether they be negative or positive? What if we could just accept that we don't know something, especially if it involves another person? There's no way we can know what their assumptions are, right? We don't know what their perspective is. So what I'm asking you to consider today is the idea of neutral. Work with what you actually know. And if what you actually know is that you don't know it all, then that's okay. But it's far better than assigning energy to outcomes that have no basis, neither whether they be positive or negative. So when we talk about perspective, we are talking about the lens in which we look through our lives. Okay? There are a few things that inform our perspective. The way we were brought up, that plays a big part of things. The messaging we heard in our upbringing, or the messaging that we heard later on, a bit later on in our life from the people that we care about or that whose opinions matter to us. We start to see things through their lens, right? And we don't necessarily know if that's our lens. So for example, if you had a parent that was negative about everything, or who worried or assumed the worst, more than likely you have taken on that way of thinking, that perspective of the world. It's not your fault, it's certainly not their fault, but it is the facts. If you have been exposed to more negative perspectives, more negative outlooks, then you are more than likely going to default to that way of thinking. And the inverse is also true. If you grew up with people who were optimistic and forward-thinking and solution-oriented and so on and so forth, then you are more than likely to have that be your default way of thinking. And what I'm asking you to think about today is the way you look at the world, the lens, your perspective, is it actually yours? Is it actually based on your life experiences, on the way life has unfolded for you? Or is it a residual experience from someone else's life? Your perspective on your life and the people in your life have a direct correlation to your quality of life. And this is so important to know. For example, if you get up in the morning and you dread just getting up, interacting with the people in your lives, going to your job, and so on and so forth, that energy has a ripple effect. Because then the next morning, if you do the same thing, you're not resetting at zero. You're carrying yesterday's energy with you. So your perspective when you wake up in the morning will more than likely set the tone for the day. And what I'm inviting you to do is bring that understanding into your consciousness and reclaim the power you have over the way you see your life. Your perspective on your life will inform how you feel about your life, how you think, how you forgive, how you set and achieve goals, how you make plans. Your perspective is everything. And at a minimum, we should try to be at neutral. And again, when I say neutral, I just mean, can you just work with what you know to be true in the present moment? So we're doing our best to remove the lens of the past, to remove the lens of other influence in our life, the people that influence us. Can you be in the moment right now, ever present and conscious of the way you're looking at life? Can you ask yourself, am I seeing this through an accurate lens right now? Or is this someone else's voice or someone else's opinion? So that's what I'm talking about when I say neutral. I'm inviting you to come back to the present moment. Become more aware and conscious of the way you are thinking. To give yourself the most power to transform your life in the moment. Because if your perspective is rooted in the past, or for example, overwhelmingly worried about the future, you are robbing yourself of the power that you have in the present moment. So again, a neutral perspective is an invitation to be in the present moment about your life, your work, your people, what you're about to eat, any of those things. If our headspace is too consumed with, let's just call it an inaccurate lens, then we're less likely to make the best choices for ourselves. We're less likely to communicate in a truly present way. We're less likely to really listen to people because we're filtering everything they're saying through a perspective that is rooted in the past or rooted in the future, but not here in the moment. And the best way we know that this is happening is if we're in a conversation with someone, particularly a loved one, and it just feels like they're saying one thing and you're saying something, and it's never connecting, like you're having two different conversations, more than likely, you're not really present for the conversation with the person. You're having a dialogue with your perspective and interpretation of what they're saying. So this is why perspective is so important, because if it's off or not in the present, we run the risk of alienating people, isolating ourselves, missing opportunities, making choices that don't serve our greater good. So at a minimum, when we're talking about deeper wellness, when we're talking about mind, body, and heart alignment, we are always talking about being in the present moment. And our perspective has to reflect that. Our perspective has to reflect exactly where we are. And for the most strength, for the most power, and for the most self-awareness and compassion, we've got to be in the present moment. We've got to see what's happening through a lens that is right here and right now. For a long time, I thought about my life through the lens of people that mattered to me. I looked at my life through their lens of my life. So if I was told that I wasn't good enough or smart enough or attractive enough or whatever, I believed all those things. And that's the way that I saw my life. So if there was a job that I was interested in, I would look at the job and I'm reading the job description. I'm reading criteria that, you know, on paper I match. But my perspective is that of someone else's, and I'm thinking, oh no, I'm not smart enough for this. I'm not good enough for this. I'm not organized enough for this. It took me a really long time to say, well, wait a second. I've been living on my own terms for quite some time now. I've accomplished a few things. I've achieved goals. So maybe the idea that I'm not that smart and that I'm not going to live up to anything isn't so true. And that realization and that awareness is removing someone else's lens and perspective and coming into my own. And we do this more often than we think. We do this when we interact with our children. We do this when we interact with our partners. We do this when we interact with our colleagues at work or our employees or our in-laws or whatever. If you're not conscious of what's happening in the present moment, you are more than likely interpreting things through your past. Or more often than not, anxiously through your future. And the easiest step or pivot or shift away from that is to try to come to a neutral place and really get that word into your vocabulary. Because neutral is consistent with present in the way that I'm talking about it right now. So this is about being in the moment, receiving information, and just taking a beat to ask yourself, am I taking this in through the lens of my own mind, body, and heart, or am I taking this in through the lens of someone else's version of my life, or what I'm capable of, or my capacity, or so on and so forth? And the reason why I wanted to make this a topic today is because sometimes when we find ourselves exhausted or overwhelmed or hurting or sad, more often than not, we're looking at the world through a blurry, inaccurate, sometimes cracked perspective. And you have to ask yourself, where am I right now? Am I in the present moment for my life as it is? Not what people thought it was going to be, not what a certain phase was going to do to my life, or any of that stuff. I'm saying take the freedom and the power of thinking about your life through the present moment. So even if you were a screw up or whatever the words are that you've heard or have internalized, maybe it's time you start saying things like, up until today, I was disorganized. Up until today, I was always late. But being neutral and being here in the present moment gives us the opportunity not only to let go of the past, but to help participate in transforming the future, which, as you know, if you're conscious of what you're doing in the present, you are, in effect, changing your future. That's the only way you can transform your future, by being conscious and aware of what you're doing in the present. So if your lens, the lens in which you're seeing life, is fogged up with the past, the future looks very much the same. But if you can give yourself the opportunity and the awareness to come back to the present moment, to hear words as they are being said, not as you think they're being said, and not as you have heard them before. This is power. This is power over your mind, body, and heart. So let's talk about a positive perspective for just a second. I don't want you to jump to that. I want you to really work at being neutral and seeing your life through the present, okay? Get good at that first. But when we talk about a positive perspective and a positive outlook on things, this is where understanding that the present informs the future, right? So you're more conscious, you're more aware, you're more in the present moment. You're making choices in the present moment with the information that is true in the moment. So what does that mean? That means that you have an opportunity to shift out of worry-based thinking and into action-based thinking. Because if you're in a place where you are aware of taking action, being solution-oriented, that is, in effect, a positive outlook. A positive outlook isn't about being super happy and all the time. No, that's draining. A positive outlook is really more about deciding with the strength of the present moment that you have the capacity to transform your future, that you can find the solution to your problem, that you know how to ask for help. That's what a real positive outlook is. Don't believe the hype about like, oh, I'm always happy all the time. That's positive. No, that's an external, sometimes misleading, right, way of thinking, or being, I should say. A true positive outlook is, one, rooted in the present, but two, filled with an awareness that you are the driver of your life. And what that means is, even if you don't have the answers right away, you know that you can find them. You know that you can ask for help. You can get them. You can get your hands on what you need. That's what a positive outlook is. And sure, if you want to match that with a sunny disposition because you feel more confident about things and your ability to change them, sure, do that. I've never met a smile that I did not like. But as always, I'm inviting you to work from the inside out. You have an opportunity to improve your quality of life, to bring your mind, body, and heart into alignment just by being in the present moment and being conscious of the way that you are seeing things. This is powerful. And it is also power. This is strength. Because if you can get out from under a lens that isn't serving you, then everything can change. Everything is possible again. And that's why managing your perspective, being aware of your perspective is so important. That's why it impacts your deeper wellness. So as we wrap up today, I really want you to think about this idea of being neutral in your perspective. Not arriving to the present moment with the past or negativity or other people's voices, but just being here right now and present for what's unfolding in front of you. This is power. This is true strength. Because if you can manage your perspective, you can manage the way your life feels, the way you experience your life. And you can already see how powerful that can be. Because then no one can influence you and the way you think and the way you see the world and the way you feel about your life. And that's the beginning of everything you want. That's the beginning of everything. So I invite you, as we close out this call, to think about your perspective on your life. See if it needs some tweaking. See if it needs to come to the present moment. You are so powerful. You are so powerful, and so much of that power comes from just the way you think. My name is Alicia Mathlin, and this has been the Deeper Wellness Talks. We'll see you next week at 12. As always, I'm going to stay online for 15 minutes, unrecorded, and answer your questions. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you. See you next week.